That means the other 97% of the population of CIA is there to support those undercover operations.
And they really have that much power to say we know where you're spending every single dollar? Because a lot of people at home wonder if that's really the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Because there's so much oversight. Like, dude, when you meet with an asset in the field, if you're an informant in the field and I'm your handler and we meet and I slide you $50 and I'm like, thank you for your information. Here's $50. Do you know what I have to slide you next? A piece of paper for you to sign as a receipt. I you not. And then on that receipt, in English, it has to say $50, my name, and then you have to sign it with something identifiable to you as the asset. So it can be an X or a Y or an
every
L.
time.
Every time. Because then I have to take that receipt back, and guess who I give it to?
Uncle Sam.
A budget and finance person who has to take my receipt along with all the other receipts from all the other field officers who had a meeting that day. And he has to run it against a budget that says, I gave $250 to field officers today, and I got $250 in receipts. And I can now put this $250 under a line item that says paying informants or paying assets, right? Field, slush fund, whatever it is. The same thing has to happen with every piece of equipment that comes in and out. If I want to put a GPS tracker on your boat, I have to request that GPS tracker. Always.
Shout out to Linda at CIA doing God's work out there. Jesus Christ. I don't want that job.
So that's why if we often talk, and I've said this to you before, right? There's only 10% of CIA that works undercover, roughly. And then of the people that work undercover, it's only about another 10% that operate in the field undercover.
Yeah.
That means the other 97% of the population of CIA is there to support those undercover operations financially, administratively, analytically, logistically, right? We have our own cartographers that make maps. We have our own librarians that look shit up. We have our own tech people who create ways for us to have, covert cell phone communication. All those personnel, all that talent, all that money is there to support a few field operations. Not because those field operations are super dangerous, some of them are, but because it's a fucking administrative burden.
Yeah.
To be able to communicate back to the Congress who approves the funding, like, hey, you gave us $5 million, we spent that $5 million responsibly.
You've heard different guys, though, from those seats, like, vaguely say things, not even vaguely. Like, I'm thinking of one right now, Chuck Schumer, longtime senator, career politician, powerful guy in D.C., he said things on TV talking about, like, you don't want to make enemies with the intelligence community. And the implication there is they got a lot more power than I do. So it almost surprises me that things like this would be like the intelligence community during serious operations would actually care that much about following every letter of law because they got to report it to Senate. It's almost like, can't they report whatever they want to Senate?
Absolutely. And that's the reality. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? In some parts of the world, if you're in Africa, you might pay somebody with $250 and get a receipt. If you're in more important places like Russia, you're probably not paying somebody $250. You're probably paying them like $25,000.
Nice bricks of cash.
Right? Big chunks of cash.
Big chunk.
So that means all the same process applies. I'm going and getting approval to bake a little football that carries $100,000 in cash. If you've never seen $100,000 in cash, it's not very big.
Yeah.
Right? We get that thing wrapped up in non-sequential bills. Maybe we even have it converted into local currency. So we're doing it in Armenia. So it's an Armenian currency. Who knows what? We wrap it up. We take it to the meeting. We hand it off. We get our receipts. That's $25,000 or $200,000 or $100,000, whatever it is, $100,000 that has now been transferred. We don't know what the fuck it's being spent on.
Apparently not. So
imagine 10 meetings like that.
Yeah.
Now you have $1 million that have just been exchanged. You come back to the Senate House and you're like, we spent $1 million on intelligence against Russia. And they're like, well, where did that $1 million go? And you're
Don't worry about it. Don't fucking worry about it. You understand?
Even worse, we'll be like, we spent $1 million on getting secrets from Russian assets. And they're like, but you still didn't know when they were going to invade Ukraine? And you're like, Well, if you would have given us $2 million, we could have done that too. And that's the back and forth, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of money that gets lost. Just think about what happened with the Mujahideen that then turned into the Taliban.
In the 80s? Yeah.
We were giving them money. We were giving them shoulder-carried rockets. We were giving them ammunition. We were giving them training.
How'd that work out?
All that stuff came back as receipts, but then you saw how it all worked out.
We got some receipts a mile away.
Bingo.
Jesus Christ. I mean, the 500-pound elephant in the room there is, though, does China have to get receipts when their intelligence agents are doing this shit?
Nope.
Russia?
Nope.
Iran?
They're not democracies.
Yeah, I'm not going to go through every country, but again, like...
The oversight is completely different. We have...
Sometimes I want it both ways.
I totally agree. And unfortunately, man, the 1,000-pound elephant to your 500-pound elephant is that every American is sitting in their fucking lazy boy, sitting at their desk, sitting on the shitter, asking themselves the same question.
Yeah.
I kind of want it both ways. What do we mean? We kind of want to be a democracy, but get the chance to skip the democratic process every now and then.
Right.
If we, as the world's superpower, if we're asking ourselves that question right now, what is every developing nation also asking themselves right now? Do we want to be a democracy, or do we want to be authoritarian? And that is the real reason that we're seeing such a rise in power and popularity for leaders like Xi Jinping, leaders like Vladimir Putin, leaders like Netanyahu, leaders like the Ayatollah in Iran. Iran just had an election. They just elected a new president who's a reformist.
Is that a real election?
Yeah, I think it's a real election. I mean, the fact that he won, I remember when he was running, I sat there with my wife, who's former CIA, and both of us were like, if that dude wins in Iran, like that's going to really upset the apple cart, because we've been saying for a long time that Iran is not a democracy. Even though Iran does practice democratic principles, the narrative that has been adopted in the United States from all the messaging that you hear about Iran is that it's like a extremist haven for terrorists and authoritarian rule under the Ayatollah. Well, they just showed that people turn out, people vote, and then they respect the vote. They honor the vote of the people. A very small group of people, and again, the Ayatollah knew that the people voting were a small group of people and they were going to vote for this reformist. Yes. So he tried to get more of the fundamentalists out to vote against the reformist. It just didn't work because the Iranian people themselves don't believe in their own democratic process. Nevertheless, what we have seen is that because there's a new reformist president in Iran, we lose the chance to say that Iran is not a democracy anymore because they just had a democratic vote. They voted in an opposition leader, and that opposition leader is now working hand in hand with the Ayatollah. Does that mean that the Ayatollah has any less power? No, but it does challenge the messaging and the narrative that has existed about Iran.
That's wild that we could sit here and say, like, oh, they're a little democratic over there.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
You know what? They love democracy.
They love democracy. They do. They just love their Ayatollah more.
Oh, my God. God, that was such a fuck up, letting that happen in 79. Such a fuck up to let that happen. And now, we're fucking 55 years later. And you know what? The Shah's son, Pahlavi, have you followed him at all?
No.
Very interesting. So when that place falls in 79, the family gets refuge in the United States. So he lives here, raised his daughters here. I think his mom's here too. So the wife of the Shah of Iran. And there's conversation that when and if they were able to push out the regime in Iran, that he would return home and be installed as, I don't know if it would be a Shah, but as like the leader. Now, this is a guy who's lived in America for the last 55 years in D.C., hobnobbing with everyone down there. And it makes you wonder, like, if there is a regime change, I'm just being a realist here, wouldn't it make sense that all the countries who are most invested in seeing that happen, meaning like Western countries like the United States, maybe would want to plug in a guy who's one of their own like that?
Absolutely. But that's not new news. Like
Oh, no, it's not.
Yeah, every
Yeah.
country wants to influence an election to get a candidate that is going to see things their way.
But literally someone who I don't want to use the term like on the payroll, but like, I mean, look where dude lives. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, getting somebody on the payroll to also win the ticket is tough. That's also a lot of pre 9/11 CIA stuff. Trying to sway elections, trying to
Pre 9/11.
yeah, pre 9/11.
What about a little post 9/11?
Post 9/11, the oversight is significantly different, man. It's a different world of intelligence post 9/11. It's hard to explain, but when I started CIA in 2007, the people who were training me in field tradecraft were all people who had built their career pre 9/11, right? 10, 15, 20-year veterans teaching the newest class. They knew nothing about the war on terror. They knew about the Cold War. They knew about the world with no oversight. They knew about the world before you had to document everything. We were being trained in a new way where everything had to be documented and everything had to be approved and everything had oversight. So there was this discontinuity in the training where they would be teaching us something that they themselves only recently learned.
Yes.
And then their war stories would be war stories that we would never get to do because they were involved in like trying to poison Castro and have his beard fall out.
And you can't do that?
No, we can't do that now. Maybe with the right court approval you can.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, now it's a different world now.
You're a good company, man. I'll give you that. You're good. You say that with a straight face. Like, we would never do that. We never try to take out a world leader. That is beneath us.
Oh, it's
as
not
an organization.
It's not beneath the organization. It's just administratively difficult.
Okay. All right. That's a better answer. I like that answer. It's administratively CIA killing other world leaders. Administratively difficult.
Administratively
I can accept
challenging.
that. See, that's why doesn't it feel better to be honest? You know what I mean?
I've never been anything but honest with you, brother. So if the
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.